Hello, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Alex Duck, and I work with the Government and Economic Development Institute here at Auburn University. I'm going to be talking with you today about the Alabama Property Tax Education Program. So I want to start off with talking about why is this presentation important? Why is this program important to us? And there's a couple of reasons. One, it's a great example of a professional development program and a certification program. In fact, not all states actually have a statewide property tax education program. Alabama is one of the states that does, and so Alabama actually serves as a model for other states that are looking to create this type of program. Also, this program illustrates how partnerships, how public policy and financial incentives can really work together to make a really successful professional development and certification program. So my objectives for today, I would like you to walk away with the following four basic things. I would like you to be able to explain why the property tax education program was created in the first place. Understand the basic process for an individual to become certified to complete the program. To be able to identify some of the benefits and incentives of the program. And then understand some of the partnerships that were necessary in order to make the program as successful as it has been. So in order to accomplish those goals, I'm going to kind of just talk about four very broad topics. The first is the need for the program, and the second is partnerships. The third will be the certification process itself, and then lastly, incentives and benefits related to the program. So we're going to start by talking about the need. So I want you to imagine for a moment that you own a business in Madison County. That's where Huntsville is, the northeast of the state. And your business is doing really well. So you want to expand, and you decide the next place you're going to open a business is in Baldwin County. That's the area just east of Mobile, down all the way at the coast. How would you feel, though, in opening your new business when you realize that your property taxes on your new business were being assessed completely differently from the business that you already owned in Madison County? And I don't just mean the value is different. I mean the actual process, the numbers, the equations, the math, the measurements, the tools that are used to measure were completely different. As a business owner, that would be very frustrating. Right? As a citizen of Alabama, that would be very confusing. Why are my taxes being handled so differently in one place than another? This is all one state. So that was the first thing. And that's actually the way things were handled in the state of Alabama. Alabama is one of the states that property tax is handled at the county level. So if you were in Madison or Limestone County versus Mobile or Baldwin County, your property taxes were being handled totally differently. So the state saw a need that needed to be addressed, that needed to be fixed. And so that's one of the reasons the property tax program was created. And then I want to talk about some case law. So when people have issues with the property tax, of course, there is a legal process to challenge those types of decisions. And so I'm going to give you just two examples here. The first one is Health South versus Jefferson County tax assessor. This went up to the Alabama Civil Court of Appeals. But the background is that for at least 3 years, Health South, which is a big medical company in Jefferson County, was reporting fictitious personal property that didn't actually exist, it didn't actually own. And this was probably to pad their books to make them look better to their shareholders and their stockholders. But this resulted in a higher tax liability. So they were paying more taxes than what they actually needed to. Eventually, this error was caught by the Jefferson County tax assessor, and he forced them to amend their return. But following that, Health South wanted to amend its previous 2 years' tax returns because they paid more taxes than they actually should have, which meant that they were actually owed a refund by the county. Again, this went to the Alabama Court of Appeals. But how do you think that the courts ruled? Okay, another example, these two brothers, their mother had passed away and left them a piece of property in Bessemer. They were not paying the property taxes. on this piece of property. So Alabama state law says that the county has the right to then do a property tax sale to sell the property out from underneath them, and they did so. However, Alabama Code 401015 says that all tax sales have to take place on the courthouse steps outside of the courthouse. This particular day, they actually held the tax sale inside the courthouse. So the brothers challenged the sale and said that it was invalid, it was illegitimate, and that actually went all the way up to the Alabama Supreme Court. And that case was actually just decided in 2020. So again, how do you think that the state ruled in this matter? Well, for you and I, that may not really be that important. But if you're somebody who is working in property tax anywhere in the state, it's important that you know. You need to know how these cases were decided because it affects policy, it affects case law, it affects how you do your job. Just for your know-how, in the first case, the state ruled that HealthSouth intentionally falsified their numbers, and therefore it was not an error. It wasn't an unintentional error, and therefore they were not allowed to amend their returns. And in the second case, the Supreme Court actually ruled in favor of the brothers because the Bessemer did not follow the correct protocol by Alabama law, having the tax sale outside on the court steps. Therefore, the tax sale was illegitimate and invalid. So again, if you're working in property tax, these are things that you would need to know. And that's another reason the program was created, is to make sure that property tax personnel are up to date and aware of the most recent legal implications of their job. Just taking a quick look at the property tax website, you can see here the Alabama Department of Revenue is ultimately responsible for this program. Here they explain the goal of the program is to achieve equitable administration of property tax laws throughout the state of Alabama. So again, that's really about maintaining that consistency. It doesn't matter what county you live in, it doesn't matter what county your business is in, your property taxes should be handled the same way. They are divided into different certifications, and I'll talk about those in a little bit. So now I'm going to switch the focus to partnerships. The legislation that was passed formed the JEAC, the Joint Education Advisory Committee, which is housed at the Alabama Department of Revenue. And the JEAC's job, they were tasked with creating a statewide property tax education program. Okay, in order to do that, in order to accomplish that goal, they actually formed a partnership and a contract with Auburn University, particularly University Outreach, and more specifically, the Government and Economic Development Institute, or GEDI. The two have a very extensive contract that outlines all of their responsibilities in great detail. But just to give you kind of some of an overview, the Department of Revenue provides subject matter experts to serve as instructors for the class. It ultimately approves candidates to sit for their certification exam. It provides appropriation funds, which I'll talk about later. That Joint Education Advisory Committee provides oversight. So whenever there's questions or disputes about an issue, they're the ones that make the ultimate decision. And because they're providing subject matter experts who actually work in the tax field, those experts are reviewing and updating the curriculum, including their workbooks and their exam content, every year that they teach these classes. So it's, again, making sure that information is always up to date, that's always super relevant to the people that are taking these classes. On the Auburn University side, GEDI facilitates the courses. So they're actually booking the venue, arranging food if they have to, making sure that folks know where to go, making sure folks are actually in attendance. Which is part of this other bullet where they maintain the records, they track individuals' progress towards certification, and once they're certified, they keep track of their recertification, which happens each year. So in addition to that, they also administer or process the applications to sit for the exam. And then they advise the Joint Education Advisory Committee. So GEDI collects all this information, it validates an individual's application, and then it takes all of that information to the JEAC for final approval for that person to sit for their final exam, their certification. Another part of this arrangement, another partnership in this arrangement, I should say, is the IAAO. It's the International Association of Assessing Officers. Now, this group, again, international, but they provide training in property taxes all over. One of what they do in this particular arrangement, they provide subject matter experts their own workbooks, their own content, and GDI pays for that. So GDI essentially contracts IAAO, invites them to come to the state of Alabama to teach certain classes. GDI still continues to handle the registrations, the venues, all the student records, and the IAAO receives a portion of the registration fees. What's great about this partnership is that courses from the IAAO, because they're recognized already as an expert provider of tax education, they do not require any kind of additional approval. And that will make more sense when I talk about the certification process. But folks may take classes outside of Auburn University, outside of GEDI, outside of IAAO, and still receive credit towards their certification or recertification. But those classes require special approval. In this case, because the IAAO is already recognized as an expert provider of tax education, they don't require any such extra approval. The individual just has to show proof that they were a participant, that they attended. So I'm going to talk briefly about the actual certification process. In order to apply to sit for the certification exam, an individual has to have passed all of the required training, all the required classes, and have a minimum number of hours of approved coursework. So they must have a minimum number of hours of professional development specifically related to the field that they're working in. All of the GDI classes, I should mention, are 3 to 5 days in length, depending on the class. The applicant must also have at least 3 years of qualified experience. That's important because there are folks who are working in the tax offices. For instance, someone may be a clerk. They may handle titles and deeds, but they may not actually do mapping. And so they cannot apply to be a certified mapper through this program because doing the actual property tax mapping is not a part of their normal job function. For the tax administrator certification, they must also be an elected or an appointed official. That would mean someone like your tax assessor or your county revenue commissioner. Depending on what county you live in, those titles vary from county to county. The exam is given annually in March. And as of this year, 2020, there's now one retake attempt that is allowed in September. So if an individual is not successful in passing in March, they can reattempt the exam in September. If they're unsuccessful again, they have to wait until the following March and begin the process anew. Successful candidates, those who pass the final examination and become certified, will receive their first appropriation fund at the end of that same year. And then every year thereafter, while they remain certified. And I'm going to talk more about the financial incentive on the next slide. All right, so this monetary incentive is actually written into state law. It's 40-1-46. For anyone who achieves any of the following designations, and there are 4, they will be paid the amount of $1,200 annually by the Department of Revenue for his or her professional achievement, excuse me. So the 4 different certifications or designations are Certified Mapper, ACM, Certified Appraiser for Real Property, ACAR, Certified for Personal Property, ACAP, and Certified Tax Manager, ACTA. It's important to note here that some counties use this as for professional development purposes and for benchmarking purposes, particularly kind of as a bonus incentive for their employees, especially in some smaller counties. So as someone is maybe a real property appraiser, they say, well, in the first 3 years, we're going to pay for you to go to all these classes. We'll pay for your travel, your lodging. We'll get you to all these classes because once you pass the exam and actually become certified, you're going to get an extra $1,200 a year. And they get that in December, again, the year they become certified, and then again, every year after that they remain certified and in property tax, working in property tax. So To review, kind of summarize everything that I've talked about with you today, the need for the property tax program was born out of the need for consistency in tax practices. Again, remember this idea that you're owning a business in one part of the state and maybe your house is in a different part of the state or a different county, or you open a new business in another part of the state. Your taxes should be handled the same everywhere. Your property taxes should be assessed, evaluated. The information should be given to you. You should have the same recourse and the same ability to pay or to amend or to challenge your property taxes, regardless of which county you happen to be situated in. Also, there was a need for professionalization in the tax field, and that's really important when we talk about case law and public policy. Those folks who are out in the counties actually doing the work, actually assessing property tax, reviewing property tax, auditing, they need to be aware of the most recent laws and policies and cases related to property tax so that they can do a better job and better serve the people in the counties that they work for. Partnerships are really important in this particular program between the public bodies, so the Department of Revenue, the Joint Education Advisory Committee, and then also the county governments. It is, in fact, the county governments that are sending their personnel to go through this training, so that's a partnership as well. The academic body, I've mentioned government and economic development here at Auburn University, and then independent third parties like the International Association of Assessing Officers, Again, the process of an individual has to go through all of the required classes, complete a certain number of hours of training. They have to apply. All of their information is verified and validated. They're approved to then sit for their exam in March. They pass in March or during now the new retake in September. They'll receive that monetary incentive, that appropriation funds in that following December. And then again, every year that they remain certified. The process is also used as a form of professional development and benchmarking. I mentioned how it can be used for professional development as an incentive, but it also can be used as a benchmark for promotions within. So if an individual is working with a county and say they're an auditor, the county may have a rule that in order for you to apply or be promoted to a senior auditor position, you have to become certified. You have to complete this program successfully and get the state certification, the state designation, before you're able to move up into a senior position or a management position. And then lastly, probably the most intangible, but probably the most important, is the benefit to us, the taxpayer. Ultimately, we're the ones who benefit from this program. Anyone who owns property, whether it's a house or a business or just land anywhere in this state, should feel confident and comfortable that their property taxes are being handled appropriately by well-informed, educated, professional individuals, and that those property taxes are going to be handled equitably, regardless of what county they happen to fall in. So I just want to share real quick. These are some of the references today from my presentation in case you had any questions. And I just want to end by saying, again, my name is Alex Duck, and I work here at Auburn University at the Government and Economic Development Institute. I really appreciate you taking time to listen to my presentation today. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is there on your screen. Thank you, and have a good day.